She knew it was a joke the moment her father refused to look at her. The train hissed and groaned on the platform, steam curling around her boots like something alive. Adeline Miller stood alone with one small suitcase, her gloved hands locked tight around the handle. Her breath came out in white bursts, not just from the cold, from the knowing, from the way her father's letter had felt too neat, too final. A man who loved his daughter would have come himself. A man who cared would have said goodbye. Josiah Miller had done neither, and that told her everything. The conductor called for boarding. Adeline did not move at first. She stared down at the scuffed leather of her shoes and waited for the familiar sting, the whisper that followed her everywhere. Too late, too plain, too damaged. She lifted her chin anyway and stepped forward, because staying was worse. The train lurched, the door slammed, and just like that, she was gone. The Miller house in St. Louis had been built to impress. Tall windows, polished floors, imported mirrors meant to reflect only what was worth seeing. Adeline had learned early how to pass those mirrors without looking, a tilt of the head, a practiced turn. The right side of her face never faced the glass. The scar made sure of that. It ran from her temple to her jaw, pale and jagged, a burn from a kitchen fire 12 years earlier, a fire she had put out with her own body, a fire she had stepped into to save her younger sister. No one remembered that part. At 24, she was already spoken of as if she were finished. Not because of her age, because of her face. Because society had rules for what could be forgiven in a woman and what could not. Her father had found a solution. He called her into his study 3 days before the train left. He did not ask her to sit. He did not ask how she felt. "I found a match for you," he said, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. Adeline had stood there with folded linens in her arms, her scar turned slightly away from him. "A match," she repeated. "Yes, Montana territory, a man with land, a man who needs a wife." Lucinda had been there too, perfect Lucinda, leaning near the window, silk dress, clear skin. Her smile had been wrong, too bright. "A mountain man," Josiah continued. "A recluse. Needs someone sturdy, someone useful." Adeline had swallowed. Useful, that word again. "When do I leave?" she asked. "Tuesday." And just like that, her life in that house had ended. Lucinda told her the truth later. Not out of kindness, out of cruelty. "He didn't send your picture," her sister said lightly, lounging against the doorframe as Adeline packed. "He sent mine." The room had gone very still. "Why?" Adeline whispered. Lucinda smiled. "Because by the time you reach him, the snows will be deep. He won't be able to send you back. Father says either you'll make yourself useful or you won't survive the winter." It had not been a marriage. It had been a disposal. Adeline packed anyway. She did not pack lace. She did not pack hope. She packed wool, needles, and grit. She packed like a woman going to war. The journey west stripped the world bare. Cities gave way to plains. Plains gave way to mountains that cut the sky open. The air grew thinner, sharper. By the time the mule cart dropped her at the edge of nowhere, her fingers were numb and her bones ached. "This is it," the driver said, tossing her trunk into the snow. Conrad Ridge. "Where's the town?" she asked. He laughed. "No town. His cabin's 4 miles up that trail. Wolves come out near dusk. Best get walking." Then he left. The silence that followed was heavy, not peaceful, watchful. Adeline stood alone beneath towering pines. The trail ahead was narrow and white. The cold bit through her coat. She dragged her trunk behind her, each step sinking into snow that did not care who she was. Her scar throbbed. Her lungs burned. She kept going. When the light finally began to fade, she smelled smoke. The cabin rose out of the trees, like something built to last against the end of the world. Logs thick as barrels, stone set deep into the earth. It was not a home. It was a stronghold. She knocked once, then again. The door opened. The man who filled the doorway was not what she had imagined. He was larger, broader, a wall of fur and muscle and cold air. His beard was dark and wild, his eyes were sharp and pale. A rifle rested easily in his hand. "What do you want?" he asked. "I'm Adeline Miller," she said, her voice shaking despite her effort. "I believe you were expecting me." He looked at her face, fully, without turning away. Something hardened in his eyes. "Miller sent a woman," he said, "not a frozen sparrow." Anger flared through the fear. "I walked 4 miles alone in the snow," she snapped. "You can decide what I am after you let me inside. Or you can watch me freeze on your porch." He studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "Get in." The door closed behind her with a sound that echoed in her chest. She had crossed the threshold, and there would be no going back. Warmth struck her all at once. Not gently, not kindly. It slammed into her bones and made her knees buckle. Adeline dropped to the thick hide rug before the stone hearth, her hands numb, her breath hitching as feeling rushed back into her fingers. The fire crackled loud and steady. The smell of wood smoke filled her lungs. The door bolted behind her. She looked up. The mountain man stood a few steps away, watching her as if she were something half wild and half broken. He did not offer a hand. He did not offer a smile. He offered silence. She pushed herself upright and brushed snow from her skirt. Her cheeks burned, from cold and from the weight of his gaze. The hood had fallen back on the walk-up. She knew the scar was plain now, red from the wind. Impossible to hide, he noticed. Of course he did. He crossed the room and lifted a folded paper from the table. A letter. Clipped to it was a photograph. He held it out. "This is the woman I paid for," he said quietly. Adeline recognized the image at once. Lucinda. 18. Blue ribbon in her hair. Soft smile. Perfect skin. Shame burned hotter than the fire. "That is my sister," Adeline said. "Not me." His jaw tightened. The paper crumpled in his fist. "So your father thinks I am blind, or stupid." "He thinks you are far away," she said. "And that winter would trap me here." He took a step closer. His shadow swallowed her. "Why did he send you?" Quote. She straightened. Fear slipped away. She was too tired for it. "Because I am unwanted," she said. "Because I am scarred. Because he wanted me gone." The words echoed against the logs. "If you want to send me back," she went on, her voice steady now, "you can try, but the pass is closing, and I will not beg." He stared at her, searching, measuring. Then he turned away. "Eat," he said, setting a bowl on the table. "Spare room is in the back. There's a lock. Use it." He took his rifle and stepped outside again, leaving cold air rushing in behind him. Adeline sank into the chair. Her hands shook as she lifted the spoon. The stew was thick and rich. It tasted like survival. Morning came without warning. The hearth was cold. The cabin silent. Adeline dressed in the gray dawn, breath fogging as she tied her boots. He was gone. No note, no instructions. A test, she realized. She did not sit. She coaxed the fire back to life. It took time, patience. She cleaned ash from the stone and fed the flames slowly. When warmth returned, she moved through the cabin. The place was solid but neglected, tools left where they fell, furs piled in corners. Dust thick on the table. She worked until her shoulders ached. By dusk, smoke curled from the chimney. Bread baked on the hearthstone. The floor shone. When the door opened, he stopped short. He stood there with a deer slung over his shoulders, snow melting into his beard. His eyes swept the room. "You didn't have to," he said. "You didn't say I couldn't," she replied. He set the deer down and washed at the basin. "I didn't ask for a maid." "You asked for a wife," she said quietly. "Or paid for one." He paused, then nodded once. "Name's Elias," he said. "Not Mr. Anything." It was the first thing about himself he had offered. Days settled into a pattern. He left before dawn. She worked. They spoke little. When they did, it was plain and necessary. Wood. Water. Weather. At night, She mended his clothes by firelight. He watched her hands, watched the way she moved. Not with hunger, with curiosity. The silence between them changed. It grew less sharp. The storm came in midwinter. The wind screamed through the trees for hours. Elias went to check the horses despite her warning. Time passed. Too much time. When the door burst open, he collapsed just inside. Blood soaked through his coat. Adeline moved without thinking. She dragged him to the hearth, cut fabric away, cleaned the wound. He gritted his teeth but did not cry out. "You've done this before," he rasped. "My sister was careless," she said, "and my father impatient." She stitched with steady hands. He watched her face, up close. The scar was silvered and firm, not ugly, honest. "How did it happen?" he asked. "A fire," she said. "I pushed her clear." He nodded slowly. Later, when the storm howled and the pain pulled him under, his hand lifted. Rough fingers brushed her cheek. Then, the scar. She froze. "It means you lived," he said softly. "That's all." Something broke open inside her. Spring brought danger with it. The snow thinned, the past softened, and one evening, voices rose from the valley. A carriage. Armed men. Elias stood fast. Adeline did not hide. The stranger spoke smoothly. Papers were produced. Claims made. Her father's name used like a knife. Elias turned to her then. His eyes were closed off, guarded. "Did you know?" he asked. "No," she said. "Never." The man smiled. "Poisoned. You were the key, Miss Miller." Elias told her to leave. She lifted the rifle instead. "This is my home," she said. "And he is my husband." The man backed away, unsettled. When the carriage left, Elias did not touch her. "They will return," he said. "With more men." "Then we stand," she replied. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time he smiled, not kindly, not gently, like a wolf who had found his equal. They did not sleep that night. Elias moved first, methodical and calm, like a man preparing for weather instead of war. He boarded the lower windows with thick planks, leaving narrow slits just wide enough for a rifle barrel. He hauled feed and tack from the barn and brought the horses closer to the cabin, keeping them within sight. Adeline followed without waiting to be asked. She melted lead over the hearth and poured it into molds, her hands steady despite the heat. She filled buckets and lined them near the door. Water. Always water. She said nothing about the fire memory that crept in when the smell of smoke thickened. She swallowed it down and kept working. "They'll come after dark," Elias said, checking the load of his rifle. "Men like that prefer shadows." "How many?" she asked. "Enough." That was all he gave her. It was enough. Night fell heavy and moonless. The cabin went dark when Elias snuffed the lamps. They sat back to back against the logs, listening to the wind rake through the pines. The quiet stretched. Each minute felt like an hour. "If this goes wrong," Elias said low, "there's a trap under the pantry. It leads to the creek. You run." Adeline reached for his hand in the dark and squeezed hard. "I am done running." He said nothing, but he did not pull away. The first sound was glass. A bottle shattered against the front door, flames blooming bright and sudden. Heat rolled through the cabin. The fire roared like it remembered her. Adeline froze. Smoke. Grease. Screaming. Her breath locked in her chest. "Adeline!" Elias barked, gripping her shoulders. "Look at me. This is now, not then." She blinked. The cabin came back into focus. The present. The here. "I've got it," she said, her voice thin but firm. She grabbed the buckets and soaked blankets, slamming them against the door where heat licked through the seams. The wood hissed. Smoke curled. Outside, boots crunched in snow. Gunfire cracked. Elias fired through the slit. The sound was deafening inside the cabin. A shout followed. Then another shot. "They're moving," Adeline called, peering through a gap in the rear boards. "3 of them. Torches." "Backside," Elias said. "Aim low." Her hands shook as she raised the revolver. She braced it against the sill like he had shown her. Breath in, breath out. A figure burst from the trees, arm cocked to throw. She pulled the trigger. The kick jarred her arm. The man dropped, screaming, torch falling into the snow. Adeline stared, stunned. I hit him, she whispered. Good, Elias said, already firing again. They didn't expect teeth. The roof thudded. They're climbing, Elias said. Chimney. He was moving before she could answer. Knife in hand, window open. Cold rushed in. Cover the door, he ordered. Then he was gone. Adeline stood alone in the firelight, heart hammering, the door glowing with heat. She heard boots on the roof. A scuffle, a grunt. A heavy body hit the ground hard. Then silence. The flames at the door died under the soaked blankets. Smoke thinned. Minutes passed. Her arms ached from holding the gun ready. Elias, she called softly. The latch lifted. She raised the revolver. The door opened. Elias stepped inside, bleeding from a cut on his brow but upright. Alive. She dropped the gun and crossed the room in 3 strides, pressing her face into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight enough to ground them both. It's done, he said. For tonight. She laughed once, sharp and shaky, then sobbed into his coat. Dawn found them exhausted and streaked with soot. They walked the clearing together. Broken torches. Drag marks, blood in the snow leading away into the trees. The men had fled. They'll come back, Elias said. Yes, Adeline replied, but not the same way. They cleaned the cabin in silence. When the fire was rebuilt and the door reinforced, Elias poured 2 fingers of whiskey and handed her one. She took it, did not drink. They want the land, she said, not us. They'll take both if they can. She met his eyes. Then we don't wait. He studied her face. The scar caught the light. It did not weaken her, it sharpened her. You're thinking ahead, he said. I always have. He nodded once. There's a town east, Silver Creek. That man will be there. He won't expect us. Adeline's pulse quickened. Fear flickered. Then settled into resolve. We go together, she said. Yes. They packed lightly. Weapons, food, proof of what had happened. When they mounted at dawn, the mountains watched in silence. Adeline glanced back at the cabin. Smoke rose, steady and calm. Home. She turned forward again. Whatever waited in Silver Creek, she would meet it, standing beside him. Silver Creek rose out of the earth like a wound that refused to heal. Mud choked the street. Smoke clung low and sour. Men moved with quick eyes and quicker hands. It was a town built on hunger. Hunger for gold. Hunger for power. Hunger for things that were not theirs. Elias slowed the horses before the first building. Keep your head down, he said. This place eats the careless. Adeline nodded. She had changed clothes before they left the ridge, trousers cut from his old pair. A heavy coat. A wide hat pulled low. The scar was hidden in shadow now, not from shame, but from strategy. They hitched the horses behind the livery, out of sight. He'll be at the hotel, Elias said, only place with clean sheets. And expensive whiskey, Adeline added. Elias glanced at her. You know this world. I grew up watching it, she said. I was never invited into it. They moved down the alley together. At the corner, Adeline stopped. I should go alone, she said. No. Elias replied instantly. She turned to him. Calm. Certain. You're too visible. Everyone here has heard stories about a mountain man with a rifle. I'm just another woman in a mining town. Either invisible or underestimated. That makes it worse. That makes it useful. He studied her face, not the scar, the resolve beneath it. Finally, he nodded. I'll be beneath the window. If you're in trouble, break the glass. I will, she said. And Elias, trust me. She stepped away before he could answer. The Grand View Hotel smelled of cigars and money. Adeline crossed the lobby with measured steps, her chin lifted, her voice ready. She stopped at the desk. "Room 204, she said. "Mr. Harrow is expecting me." The clerk hesitated. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Shall I announce myself? Or would you prefer discretion?" The clerk paled. He handed her the key. She took the stairs slowly, listening. The hallway was quiet. She stopped outside the door and pressed her ear to the wood. Nothing. The lock turned easily. Inside, the room was plush and warm. A desk sat near the window. Papers stacked neatly. A small iron safe rested in the corner. Her heart pounded. She searched the desk first. Contracts, survey maps, bribes written in tidy hand. Then the doorknob turned. Adeline spun. The man who entered wore a gray suit and a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Well," he said, "this is unexpected." He closed the door behind him. "You're alive," he said slowly. "That's inconvenient." "I came for the contract," Adeline replied. He laughed. "You think you could just take it?" Quote. He lunged. They struggled. She fought with everything she had: nails, teeth, desperation. His hand struck her face. She fell back hard. The revolver slid from her coat and vanished under the bed. He drew a small pistol. "I was going to let Winter finish you," he said, "but this will do." Adeline looked toward the window. "You forgot something," she said. "What's that?" "I'm not alone." The glass exploded inward. Elias crashed through the window like a force of nature, boots slamming into the man's chest. The pistol fired wild. Elias was already on him, knife flashing. "Where is it?" Elias roared. "The safe!" the man screamed. "The combination is 4185. "Open it," Elias snapped. Adeline spun the dial with shaking hands. The door creaked open. Inside lay the contract. Her father's signature, bold and cruel. "Burn it," Elias said. She struck a match, held it steady, watched the paper curl and blacken. The man sobbed. Elias leaned close. "If you come back," he said quietly, "you won't leave." They fled the room moments later, down the back stairs and into the night. Silver Creek disappeared behind them in a cloud of dust. They rode hard until dawn. When the sun rose, Elias finally slowed the horses. He looked at Adeline then. Really looked at her. "You didn't hesitate," he said. "I never do," she replied. A smile tugged at his mouth. "You saved us." "We saved each other." He nodded. "Your father won't stop," he said. "Men like him never do." Adeline stared ahead. "Then we won't stop either." The road stretched east, toward the city she had fled, toward the man who had traded her away. She did not feel fear. She felt ready. The city smelled wrong the moment they reached it. Coal smoke, rotting garbage, perfume layered over decay. St. Louis rose around them in tall brick walls and narrow streets that pressed too close. Adeline felt it in her chest before she saw the Miller estate, the place where mirrors had taught her to look away. Elias reined the horses to a stop 1 block out. "We don't rush this," he said. "Men like your father thrive on noise. We end this quiet." Adeline nodded. Her hands were steady. "He won't expect us together." "He won't expect you standing tall," Elias said. They left the horses with a stable boy and walked the last stretch. Gaslight flickered along iron fences. Laughter drifted from open windows. Music. Crystal glasses clinking. Josiah Miller was hosting a dinner. The oak doors opened before them without ceremony. A servant froze at the sight of Elias's broad frame and gun belt. Before he could speak, Adeline stepped forward. "I am expected," she said. Her voice carried. The dining room fell silent. Lucinda stood first. Her fork clattered to the table. "Adeline," she whispered, "you're alive." "Disappointed?" Adeline asked calmly. Josiah Miller rose next. His face flushed. His eyes darted to Elias, then back to his daughter. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "You were sent away." Elias stepped forward. "You sent her to die." Gasps rippled through the room. Josiah scoffed. "She was provided for." "You traded her," Elias said, and his voice made grown men shrink. "You lied to me. You tried to steal my land." Josiah straightened. "Business arrangements." Adeline cut him off. "You sent me because I was scarred," she said. "Because I embarrassed you. Because you thought I would disappear." She stepped closer. The scar was fully visible in the gaslight. She did not turn away. "I didn't." Elias reached into his coat and tossed a heavy leather pouch onto the table. It burst open. Raw copper and silver spilled across white linen. "The land is producing," Elias said, "and the contract is ash." Josiah's breath caught. Greed warred with fear. "We can discuss this," he said quickly. "You're my daughter." "No," Adeline said. "I am Adeline of Conrad Ridge." Quote. Lucinda stared at her. Envy twisted her perfect face. "Keep the portraits," Adeline said softly. "I kept the truth." She turned away. Elias offered his arm. She took it. They walked out together. The doors closed behind them. They did not stay in the city. By morning, the road west stretched open again. The air grew cleaner with every mile. When the mountains rose ahead, Adeline felt her lungs fill fully for the first time in years. Home. At the ridge, the cabin waited. Smoke rose from the chimney. The door stood strong. Elias dismounted and held out his hand. "Stay," he said simply. She placed her palm in his. "Always." They stepped inside together. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, something lasting had been built. Spring settled slowly over Conrad Ridge. Snow pulled back from the ground in uneven patches, revealing dark earth beneath. Water ran loud and clear through the creek. The mountains did not soften, but they breathed easier. So did the cabin. Elias rebuilt what the fire had scarred. Adeline replanted what the winter had taken. They worked side by side without speaking much. They no longer needed to explain themselves. Their movements fit together the way hands do after years of knowing. The threat did not return. Weeks passed, then months. No men came up the pass. No letters followed from the city. The land stayed quiet, as if even greed had learned better than to climb that far. One morning, Elias came in from the shed, carrying a small box made of smooth pine. He set it on the table without a word and went back outside. Adeline opened it alone. Inside was a ring, plain, strong, a band of hammered silver, imperfect and solid, no gem, no shine meant for show. It was beautiful. That evening, they sat on the porch as the sun sank behind the peaks. The air smelled of thawed earth and pine sap. Elias cleared his throat. "I never wanted a wife," he said. "Didn't think I was built for it." She waited. "I wanted someone who wouldn't flinch," he went on. "Someone who could stand when things got hard." She turned to him. "I never wanted to be chosen for my face." Silence settled between them, not heavy. "Honest?" Elias reached into his pocket and took out the ring. "Then marry me," he said. "Not because of paper, not because of winter, but because this place is empty without you." Adeline did not cry. She smiled. Slow, certain. "Yes," she said. They married at the ridge with no witnesses but the mountains and the wind. Elias's hand shook when he slid the ring onto her finger. Adeline's scar caught the light. She did not hide it. It belonged there. Years passed. The cabin grew into a ranch. The trail became a road. Men came looking for work and stayed because Adeline paid fair, and Elias worked harder than anyone. She opened a small schoolhouse near the creek. Then a clinic. The scarred woman who could stitch wounds without fear became a name spoken with respect. No one called her ugly. When Elias grew older, he shaved slower. His hands stiffened in the cold. But every night, he reached for her before sleep, as if to make sure she was still there. When he died, it was quiet. In his bed, with her hand in his. They buried him on the ridge he had defended with his life. Adeline stood straight through the service. When it was over, she touched the locket he wore beneath his shirt. Inside was not a portrait of a flawless girl. It was a small sketch. A woman with a scar. And beneath it, a simple line. "My perfect match." Adeline lived many years after that. She never returned to the city. When people asked about the scar, she did not explain. She simply smiled. The mountains had taught her enough.